Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today, for watching this. I am JP. I am a 2019 fellow for the Nyah project. I went over to Bali and I'm passionate about leadership, and I'm excited to be talking to someone who is also passionate about leadership. I've got Lemon Andersen over here. I'm just going to let you introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do and what kind of leader you are.
Yeah, I have a couple of roles as a leader, actually. My name is Lemon Andersen. I'm a poet first, playwright, television writer, performer. I do a bunch of, I'm an executive creative director at a multicultural agency where I have writers, POC, people of color, who I supervise, and we work on really corporate responsibility campaigns, making sure that a lot of these companies are responsible to the consumers who are buying their products and doing it in a very effective way. So I'm excited about talking about that.
That's awesome. You're creative.
Yeah, I am a creative for sure.
That's wonderful. And leadership is creative, and there's often this idea of leadership that most of us have, that it's either like a corporate leader or a politician that holds the bar of leadership, and it's one person at the very top that we all look up to. But in my own journey becoming a leader, I've realized that it's really not like that, and everyone has their own definition of what leadership is.
Right.
And coming from a creative side and coming from a personal side of everything that you do, I'm wondering, what is your personal definition of leadership?
I'm in service. I'm in the service business. That's the leadership position I play. I'm really good at bringing people up, giving artists space, giving artists space to fail, even when it's on a pretty big budget project. The writers and creative directors who work under me, they don't really work under me, they work with me. My job is to make sure that they have the space to grow and glow and know that this is part of not having the generational wealth that they were born with, right? It's like you have to learn from experience, and you have to fail by experience. So I love that part. I'm in service to the actors I work with and I write for on set as well, mostly because the actors could benefit from a writer like myself as far as their instrument goes. And I'm also in the leadership business of what I do with the community and mentorship with young people. I do my best to teach young artists how to consider, or teach them to consider, the business of art and how to succeed in that.
Wow, that's really powerful. And I mean, there's no doubt as to why Nyah is having you on here today, because your story is about, breaking down traditional barriers that often cloud us masses of people from achieving the greatest things that we can achieve. And that's exactly what Nyah Project does. And your mission is tied to the same thing that Nyah's mission is, and my mission as an organizer, bringing people in, sharing our struggles together to fight for better days, is exactly the same. So I'm wondering, on that topic of challenges and struggles, what's been one of your biggest struggles on your path to leadership?
There's been a couple of struggles, actually, but I like the struggle. I'm in it for the fight. I was built for this. I came up from humble beginnings. I didn't go to the schools most of my peers have gone to. I didn't go to these prestigious, this higher learning. I learned this business, or I learned how to stay in this business because I have the marathon career, right? I've been around 25 years professionally as an artist. I've been in this business for a while now, and the struggles have been competing against some of the more academically inclined talents out there, who are trying to make a connection to a community they didn't come from, right? Or trying to serve a community they didn't necessarily grow up in. And it's not an authentic relationship. At the same time, you can't X them out. And so it's really about building and collaborating with them and letting them know that I might have not came from the schools they've come from, or I might have not had the relationships they've had, but I care deeply about the work that gets put into the community and what comes out of it, what are the results, and doing it in a way that's really authentic and making that real connection and doing it together.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of being a leader, and I certainly center this in my own work, is coming up with creative solutions or outlets, and bringing the most amount of people forward and leaving no one out. So I think that's really awesome. And it's interesting how, leadership good leadership across so many different issues or so many different, I guess, realms of interest or whatever, carries up that common definition of like, leadership isn't just like you being the person at the top. In order to be a leader, you got to have people following you. And in order to have people follow you, you got to have intense relationships with them, strong relationships with them, and deep investment in them. And I love that. Can you tell
Very
us
deep relationships, very deep investments in them. You have to believe in them more than they believe in themselves, and you have to be sincere about it. And that's rare. And you want to be that rarity as a leader, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, yeah,
It's
I
hard to trust people, and so you want to be someone who another talent trusts when they've been, mostly let down, by the business, by their communities. So it's important to be a person who people can invest time and can be vulnerable around, for sure, as a leader.
absolutely. And I'm wondering if maybe you have an anecdote of one time that you developed someone as a leader, one time that you saw someone shine.
Yeah, I won't name any names, but I work with a really well-known actor now who we both come from Puerto Rico, right? We're both Latino, we're both Nuyorican, and it was very important for me because I remember being an actor myself and not having the support because of the kind of Nuyorican talent I was or the Nuyorican instrument I was. I was a third generation American Latinx or American Latino, right? And I was being swallowed up by, well, actually, I didn't. I was being swallowed up by a business that wasn't really catering to me. It was just like, wow, I wish I had more support. I wish people understood that I really care about my Latin identity. And when I saw some of these talents coming up, specifically one talent, I wanted him to know that he had a real connection and he had a real voice. He had a real responsibility, not only to our community in New York, but our diaspora and our island in the Caribbean, and creating relationships for him to lead on the island, creating relationships for him to support on the island, being behind him, bringing the elders down and making them aware that there's a lot of potential here. We should support this talent as they move forward with leadership. So that was a certain case. Yeah.
That's really powerful to hear. I resonate a lot with, fighting for the people and places you love. The people and places I love is fighting for the people and places I love is a core part of my leadership journey, and I always keep Miami close to my heart in those ways. I remember you and I were talking a little bit about an anecdote of when you were young and you were organizing, you were in youth activism spaces like I am in now, but through the lens of theater. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, that's why I started. I started at this community center in the south side of Williamsburg called Puente. And Puente was founded by the Young Lords Party. And a lot of the members of the Young Lords, shockingly, surprisingly, were super well educated. And I didn't grow up with that narrative. I didn't grow up with the narrative of these educators these young lords and having that kind of real education and that real, a lot of them graduated from Harvard and they went on to do communications for a living. And so they had this community center, and in the community center, they had a theater program. And I started there as an actor. I started to really learn the craft of telling stories and writing plays, but I was writing for the community. I wasn't writing plays that were being staged on collegiate levels or on academic stages like Yale or even something local like Hunter. I was actually writing plays and performing them as an actor for the New York City public school system. And that was important because transcending those messages and making those comedic and tragic dramas were so vital to me, because that's the audience I wanted to reach first. I didn't care about the paid subscribed audience that goes to the theater. I cared more about transcending the work to an audience that never goes to the theater, that never sees themselves. And the Young Lords taught me that. And so I began that journey as a youth activist, and I'm still an activist. I'm just not a youth activist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
A core part of leadership, I think, is giving back. And I think a lot of people take that as this like moralistic thing, like, oh yes, it's important for me when I'm a leader to give back, but I like to think that it's actually strategic for you to give back, to like develop your leadership, and what it means for you to become a leader has to do with serving others and pulling other people up. And I'm wondering, what is one way in which you give to the community or those you love?
I teach at Arizona State University, and I teach on campus and off campus. The off campus work is more important to me because I'm tangible. So I get to work with directors like Spike Lee. I've acted across Denzel Washington and worked with some really great talent and developed around some really great directors. I have that access. These kids in Arizona outside of Tempe don't have that access, but they have access to me through the university. That is one of many ways I give back because I'm tangible, right? So I get to write, I create a lot of these big Nike commercials. I work on a lot of great projects, and these kids get to touch me and they get to work with me and they collaborate with me on their version of what an ad looks like coming out of their communities, what a cigarette ad might look like coming out of, you know, Marietta, which is in Arizona, and it's 90% Latino, and really working with them to identify their neighbors, their mothers, and their streets, and creating a before and after healthy environment, right? What that image looks like. I love that. That's to be tangible, to be a working artist, and to go into community and say, you have access to me because I have access to all of these talents who I work with daily. I will tell you everything they've taught me. I would teach it all to you. That's so, I mean, it changes the dynamic in the room when you're someone who's doing this for a living. You're an artist who makes a living doing art, and you're in their classroom, you're in their living room, teaching them how to do the same.
Yeah, that's really resonant. And like when you grow up poor or low income or working class, you start realizing that the word investment and investing in someone is much more beyond something monetary. It could be
Right.
time, it could be accessibility, it could be power, it could be connections, it could be skills, it could be in a lot of things. And that's something that I resonate with a lot. And I think something that has contributed to my own purpose as a leader and as an organizer. And I'm wondering, Nyah, actually, when we say Nyah project, Nyah is a Swahili word for purpose. Have you discovered yours yet? Do you
Yes,
know what it is?
I'm a poet. I'm a poet. I'm a successful poet. I have many different platforms where my poetry exists. That to me, I mean, as a poet, what I love about this role so much is because only the poets, according to James Baldwin, and I believe in this, can tell the truth about our society. I get to tell the truth about our world for a living. There's no hiding here in my position. I bring poetry to text. I bring poetry to scripts. I bring poetry to relationships. I bring poetry to uh, short story, screenwriting, actors, dialogue. So I do this for a living, and it makes change happen in the world. I get to say I do that I'm a poet, and I bring poetry to every every circle of work I'm involved in. Even when it comes to community work, I teach the responsibility of poetry and bringing truth to power. So that is my purpose.
Yeah, I thank you for that. And yeah, James Baldwin is someone who I really look up to. I look up to a lot of people from his time, Ella Baker, Huey P, Fred Hampton. I'm wondering who's one person that you look up to?
I look up to There was this poet named Reggie Gaines who I really admired growing up. I wrote a TED talk and performed it. And it was about this relationship I had with a real mentor, a working mentor. And he's someone I admired. I wanted to cater my career after his, because he was saying really, performing amazing work and saying powerful messages within his work. And I appreciated that. And he was also making a living out of it. So Reggie has always been the biggest influence in my life. And for him to take me on as a mentee, it changed my life. And I do that for a living now. I want to change. I want to turn young poets into professionals. I want to turn young talents into really great actors, especially when it comes to the Latin identity. So Reggie Gaines, for sure.
Yeah, and it's great because now like you have gained the skills of a mentor that he once had for you, and you're doing that for other folks now, and that's how you sort of continue the legacy
That
that.
was part of the promise
Yeah.
that we made. That was part of the promise that if he taught me, I had to teach it to someone else.
And why do you think that's important?
Because we all we got, we all we need.
Hmm.
If we reach out, if we're not selfish, if we're not greedy with our time, and we're really mindful of what kind of impact we can make in someone else's life, and they can actually make it the world a better place, or make art a better, you know, whatever art, whatever genres you're working in, whatever mediums you're working in, make it better because of your relationship with them, then you've really done something important in the world. That's real purpose versus just putting out commercial content and putting out commercial work. That's okay. But to actually make someone better, almost better than you, that's my job. When I mentor young people, when I mentor artists, I want them to be better than me. And that was the relationship Reggie had with me. And that's very special, right? I'm actually teaching the competition how to be better than me.
Hmm.
And I love it. And I
Yeah.
think there's a selflessness to it that I love.
Yeah, and I think that that's how you sort of start defining what leadership is, right? When we start talking about sharing our skills and not hoarding them to be the best, when we start equipping others to carry on the legacy and the work, all the work that we're trying to do as leaders is bigger than ourselves, right? If we're doing the work that we're trying to do as leaders only for ourselves, it's hard to imagine whether our heart is actually in it.
You're
So
not a
when we
leader.
share our work, yeah, right?
You're
And
not a
so when
leader.
we share our work with others and we perfect their skills and make sure that that leadership grows, so does our impact. And it's when you start asking questions like that and having thoughts in your head or conversations with those others like that is when you start defining your own definition of leadership. And
Right.
I love the way in which.
Let me give you an example. I can work with a slam poet and I can work on their text and I can work on their voice, but I can also challenge them to see their work through the lens of other disciplines, right? What is it like when you actually take a voice class, take a songwriting class, take an acting class? What kind of poet will you be after that? Right? These are the kinds of lessons I took as a performer growing up. Why would I want to keep that to myself? Right? When I can advance our art, right? Our art form by making better poets, by making poets who can, basically make people who don't like poetry love poetry all of a sudden because that one poet is that good. That one poet knows how to just shift the paradigm in a way that no one's ever seen before. That takes disciplines, many disciplines, to become that kind of performer that shakes the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I can think of one um, poet that had a profound impact on me when I heard them, you know, speaking live. It was Aja Monet, and
I
and
mentored Aja Monet.
she's awesome. And it's just to think of folks disseminating love for a talent or a skill or an articulation of something. It's beautiful because when we start disseminating and decentralizing those skills, we're able to grow with others.
Right.
We take everything that we take all the ways in which we've been invested in and we carry that onwards. And that reminds me a lot of what Nyah Project seeks to do. All the fellows and all the folks who participate in Nyah's leadership get invested in intensely.
Right.
But then what happens after that? They don't just stay there and then the next cohort does the same thing. That cohort of people who are invested in, then they become leaders who share those skills in every issue or every corner that they go in afterwards. And yeah, it's beautiful to hear. And I love the way that you talk about your mentors and your mentees. I'm wondering though, from your perspective, what do you think happens when there's people that, like, let's say people know you and you're in the room with them and then you leave? What would people say about you?
I wouldn't care. Honestly, here's why. It's part of my practice. That's my holistic practice. Is I live a very mindful, spiritual life. That's part of my leadership.
Mhm.
Is to not consider what people think about me, but to love them unconditionally, regardless. It's one-sided. It's agape. It's what
Mhm.
we practice. I used to have that issue. I used to be concerned about what they thought about me. I can only do my job. And I walk in many rooms. I pitch our ideas. I pitch our communities. I pitch stories about our people in a way that's, it's either high concept or low concept, big risk or not. I can't consider what people might think of me. And this is a practice, honestly. And I don't say that to be brash. It's part of my holistic lifestyle. And it's something I also learned from the young lords. It's part of our principles. To be one-sided.
Right.
I'm in the service. I'm not in the service of any returns. I'm only in the service of giving. That's it. That's my lifestyle. Yeah.
And when you give so much as a leader, I'm wondering, how do you measure or how do you know that your leadership is working?
When I'm sincere about it. Again, it's all practice here, JP. It's a practice that takes time, right? I think I come from humble beginnings. I lost my mother and my father to HIV and AIDS and drug addiction, and I had a lot of trauma growing up. And how I healed was by taking this really interesting, or making this really interesting outlook on life. And so it's important for me to know that I'm in the service business strictly, only. That's it. That's it. That's my leadership. I'm in the service business. I know how to make $1. I know how to rub 2 dimes together. I'm good to go. Fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's great advice that I'm taking.
Yeah, you can consider other folks, but it's a practice. It is a practice because we're human beings. Yeah.
What's maybe the best piece of advice that you've received?
Never share your dreams. Make them happen. Because when you share your dreams with people, especially people you love, then there might be high expectations for you to turn those dreams around overnight. So you're on your own journey with your own dreams. Your dreams will come true, and they will prove themselves when you're in your process and you're working on them. Never share them. I find that, especially with young people, they're big dreamers, and their dreams start to fall to the wayside because they share their dreams with everyone else. And those are so precious, right? Those dreams are so precious. You want to take care of them. You want to be able to just own them for yourself, and work on them outside of people. Because sometimes our own family members have high expectations of us, and they're asking us, what are you doing with your life? Well, I'm working on my dreams. What are your dreams? That's not something you want to share. Something you want to keep to yourself. So I would always say, do not share your dreams. Keep them to yourself.
Well, now I'm wondering, from the perspective of an organizer, what happens when your dreams are collective? What happens when you do want to share your dreams and make the vision that you have a reality to share with other people?
Well, that's a group decision, right? You're working with your peers, and you have a real vision as an ensemble, as a group. So you should share that dream. I envision that this can happen with our project, but your personal dreams is something I believe in protecting. Even when you're in a village of dreamers, there are personal dreams that you want to protect for yourself.
Yeah, I hear that, and I think it's like one role that we can play as leaders is giving the people the tools and accessibilities to make those dreams a reality. They can, but we can find ways to let people understand what their dreams are and tap into less despair and more hope and actualize those dreams.
Yeah, I'm very protective of dreamers. Protective of the dreamers. I know what it takes to make those dreams a reality, and it's hard work. So protect it.
I'm wondering, with the topic of dreams coming up, I'm wondering, does the practice of dreaming find itself in the creative practice of your poetry?
Yeah, because the more you dream, especially daydream, the more you believe in your daydreams, the more you practice your daydreams. By the time your dreams happen, you've been prepared. You've prepared yourself for years of daydreaming. So by the time you get on stage, get in front of an audience, begin to write that book, no one sees the 5 years of daydreaming you've had, right? It's all been there, because part of daydreaming is not just to stare into space. It's to actually have faith in your process. I have faith in this work I'm doing. I have faith in this service I'm giving. I have faith in the writing. No one needs to know, but by the time it shows up, I would have been 5 years in. And that's what happened to me. And I wanted to share that with young people, that I spent a lot of time keeping secrets. That by the time I became a professional, I've always been a professional because I was practicing behind closed doors. I was believing in this person, believing in this new version of myself and working on this new version of myself, that by the time I became a kid who survived a really tough upbringing, it was a whole new person. And that whole new person has been building themselves up behind closed doors.
And I guess to just close this off a bit, if there's anything that you want someone watching this to take away, what would it be?
I would say, I would want you to take away that it is okay to be a teacher and an artist. It is okay to be an artist and a community activist. It is okay to be an environmentalist and a talent. It's okay to be in service of the world and believe in your craft. It is more than okay.
I hear that. And wow, that was really deep. And I think I'm going to be chewing on a couple things after our talk today, and just want to ground us back in the moment with maybe like 2 or 3 rapid fire questions that you could answer for me.
Okay.
All right.
I'll try my best here.
Lemon has a theme song. Every time he walks into a room, this theme song plays. What is it?
P. Diddy's "We Ain't Going Nowhere." Can't stop now. It's Bad Boy for Life.
Got you. A book or podcast you like right now?
I love this podcast called La Brega.
Got you. And what's it
From
about?
the history of Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay, cool. And what is food? What is a meal or something food related that reminds you of home?
Beans, rice and beans, grandmother's rice and beans, generational recipe.
I feel you heavy on that. All right. Well, with groundedness and leadership and love for our people and love for each other and learning a lot, I want to thank you so much for joining us on here today. I've definitely learned a lot.
Looking forward to working for you one day. Really.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you.